Hello everyone, and welcome to HORRORific Tales. In this segment we celebrate the creations of independent authors and aspiring writers. Please like and subscribe and share these episodes. It can help our talented friends get as much exposure as possible. We would also appreciate it if you could support our artists by following them on their individual platforms and by purchasing their works. Details on how to do this are in the episode description. In this horrific tale, a street worker finds herself taking on more than she bargained for. Join us now as we present The Ladies of the Night by Stephen Knight. The place smelt of dry urine and dog feces, the latter of which was spread every few metres as dog walkers and residents realised that no one cared about the slate lane. Bins were overflowed, the rubbish sprawled all over the old brick road, with its entrance from the residential houses at one end, right through the Tunnel of Love to the industrial units in George Place at the other. In the evenings, it was a haunt for the night trade of the prostitutes, who for decades had been practising the oldest profession in the world. They fucked up against walls, in the darkness of the dimly lit back streets, or even on mattresses that had either been abandoned or strategically placed in some of the private parking spaces belonging to the residents of Emma Place or Millby Road. Sex was easy to get. £20 got you a blowjob, £30 a full fuck. For £40 you didn't even need a condom. I could feel the full effect of shooting your load into a dirty and worn out vagina. She had been doing this for some time, desperate for money after coming from a broken home, her mother leading her into the ways of street prostitution, while losing her own income as her ageing looks deteriorated, and the need for this woman also floundered as men passed her to move on to the next hooker. Julie Butcher was now aged 28, but looked at least 10 years older. She was old hat. She had her regulars, and she had the chancers, those who thought that they could get a cheap fuck, and those who ran away after without paying. That was a regular problem, which is why a lot of the girls who did speak to each other agreed that it was money up front in future. They all knew it happened, and they also knew that they could hardly go to the police, like a petrol station manager would when someone drove off without paying for their fuel. There was also the problem for some of the girls that used the pimp, of getting the money to him. Many times he didn't believe their stories of the client doing a runner, and would charge him just the same, 50% of the agreed fee. Julie and her cohorts looked out for the police. They never knew when there would be a crackdown, picking out the curb crawlers, and therefore taking away the girl's livelihood for 1 or 2 nights. She looked over at her friend Penny, noticing that they both seemed to be dressed similarly in promiscuous short skirts and low tops. It was August, the summertime, and the girls knew that they had to remain improperly dressed to let the punters know that they were providing the service. They were the ladies of the night. It was sometimes the only way that the dirty old men would decipher between them and the residents in the area. Sometimes it happened, but there seemed to be an element of calm between most of the residents and the street workers, with most of them engaging in conversation and some of them caring and telling the girls to stay safe. Julie and Penny had reminisced several times about the time that the local vicar and his congregation had decided to visit the area and talk to the girls, offering them drinks and food. There was one problem. Their outreach work was done on the same night that the police had chosen to do one of their clampdowns. Needless to say, the sermon on the following Sunday at St Paul's Church in Dumford Street was filled with laughter as the priest announced that he was nearly arrested. "You have much business tonight?" Penny inquired of her friend as she noticed her walking past towards the Millby Road end of Stonehouse Street. Julie shook her head as she slowly strolled, while scanning the road for anyone that may be approaching, either as a pedestrian or in a vehicle. "It's bloody freezing tonight, babe," she said as she rubbed her hands together and then raised them to her mouth, blowing the hot air from her breath into them. "Yeah. If it weren't for the fact that I owe money to my pimp, I wouldn't be here tonight, I can tell you." "Dave the Rave still ripping you off then?" Julie inquired, whilst knowing that some of the girls relied on him to get the additional business, as he had contracts who wanted a quick fuck and would call him direct. Dave didn't really care about the girls, and didn't take an interest apart from taking half their earnings from them, even if the business wasn't done through him. Julie knew that she relied on her own prowess rather than using the overly demanding pimp. He always hung about inside the Lord High Admiral pub, watching his girls through the windows, while slowly drinking a pint. He had to buy something to remain there, otherwise the landlord would throw him out. She watched Penny nod her head. "Doesn't he always?" "I don't bother with him, love. I get my own business." Penny looked up as the man approached, a baseball cap and a hood covering his face, as though he didn't want to be recognised, although a lot of the time the dirty old men hid their faces in order that they weren't picked up by the council's CCTV, which was placed at various points in the street. "I think this one is mine. Good luck. Later." Julie said as she made herself scarce, in order that her friend could complete the sale. "Looking for business?" Penny inquired as the tall, well-built man approached. She noticed his bulky body, strong biceps and pecs that filled his ribbed jumper, as though he had been working out. He looked at her. "How much?" She knew that she could set her own price, because anyone who came down there looking for business was there for one reason and one reason only. But she didn't want to appear expensive, especially as she wasn't the most good-looking girl in the Plymouth trade. 40. She could just see his facial features, and noticed that he wasn't that old. Not that she cared. As long as they paid, she would fuck any age. The stranger nodded, and took some notes out of his pocket, counted 2 £20 notes and passed them to her. A man of very few words, he asked, "Where?" The lady of the night nodded her head sideways towards the steps that would take him towards the Tunnel of Love in Slate's Lane, and then led the way. The man followed. As he reached the bottom of the steps, she nodded left. "This way, big boy," she exclaimed, whilst leading him further into the sheltered semi-darkness. With little hesitation, she felt herself being forced against the cobbled wall. At first she guessed that he was the sort of punter who liked it rough. They were about, and there were many. They didn't get it that way at home, and so they made other arrangements. A large hand pulled her short skirt up and forced itself into her panties, the fingers going into her vagina, with the same force as she could put up against the wall. The panties were ripped off as the stranger showed his strength, although she was instantly pissed off that she would have to buy another pair now out of the £40. Perhaps Dave the Rave would let her off his half, but she doubted that. The stranger undid the buckle of his belt, and his trousers fell to the floor. "Stay still," he ordered, as he placed his right hand around the girl's throat. "I said, stay still." Penny felt uncomfortable and realized that she was gasping to breathe. She started gurgling to try and let the punter know that she needed to take a breath. He didn't care. He tightened the grip even further, and she felt the strong grip in what seemed to be equally muscly hands. She couldn't get her words out. She was trying to tell him that she didn't do this, and time was up. She started to struggle, one hand on the forearm of the hand that was strangling her, while she reached down with the other hand to try and grab his penis. Finally she managed it. "Fuck!" Penny grabbed it. The penis wasn't even hard. She held it as tight as she could, and then forced her hand even further around his bollocks. But the grip around her neck tightened even more. Her eyes had begun to bulge. She tried to let out a scream, or even a cry, with the hope that Julie might still be around and might hear her desperation, but all she could manage was a troubled gasp. He was pushing her downwards. She struggled, kicking her legs out and hitting his arms with her fist, but he was too strong for her. She still told herself that she had a chance. "Ah!" he exclaimed painfully as he realized exactly what she was doing. The one hand turned into two as he removed the second hand from her panties and placed it around her neck. He washed her face, going to a bright shade of red as she gasped for air. One last breath, and then her body flopped to the floor. The stranger jumped on top of the motionless woman, whilst not knowing if she was still alive. He slapped her in the face before strangling her as a last resort to make sure that she was dead. In no hurry, he looked down at his penis. It wasn't erect in any way, and so he stood up and reached down for his trousers, quickly fastening the buckle on the belt. He looked left and right, up Slate Lane and down towards the industrial units. No one was around. He then reached into his deep pocket and took out his knife, with its long, shiny blade glistening in the dim light. With his right hand raised above his head, he tightened his grip on the handle, just as he had done minutes earlier with the girl's neck. He stared down at his victim, her eyes still looking up at him. Then he brought the blade down with muscly force and stabbed her centre chest. Once, twice, 46 times, ensuring that it had ripped open her stomach. His eyes opened wide as he noticed the contents. He told himself that he had saved a life from drugs, poverty and sexual perversion. The prostitute was pregnant. The blood spread around with every plunge of the blade, drops splattering on the walls of the tunnel, and then free-flowing on the ground amongst the urine and rainwater which started to run and disappear into the drain. He looked down at his clothes. He was covered in her blood. His face, some had splattered under his hood and onto his face. The man took his hoodie off and wiped his face with it the best that he could. He now needed to get away, but already had a plan, an escape route. He placed the bloody blade back into his trouser pocket, took one final look at his kill, and then calmly walked up towards the residential end of Slate Lane, but didn't go all the way, stopping at the rear of 43 Emmett Place. He pushed the gate open, which had always been left unlocked by the trash residents. Drug addicts who always needed a quick getaway from the place when they were being raided. There was washing on the line, and in the darkness of the garden, that was overshadowed by a giant oak tree, He grabbed a zip-up jacket whilst placing the hoodie into the fire burner. Quickly, he took out a box of matches and lit the hoodie for it to burn amongst the wood in the drum. It soon caught fire, as there was still some accelerant on the branches that had been placed in there before. The flames threw themselves upwards. The stranger didn't waste any time. The back door was also unlocked and open. Zipping up the top that he had stolen en route, he peered inside, and up the stairs on the right, just in case anyone was there. There wasn't, so he continued walking up 3 separate staircases. There was a door, and quietly, he opened it slowly again, just in case there was anyone in the hallway. Again it was clear. He knew the front communal door which led out onto Emma Place was just in front of him, and calmly headed that way, opened the door, which required both the use of the handle and the yaw lock at the same time, stepped outside and closed the door behind him. There was one CCTV camera in the street, and he knew that. He also knew that the direct line of sight was blocked by the branch of a tree which rendered the camera useless. He couldn't head back in the direction of the prostitutes, because he might be seen, and so he headed left, calmly walking as though he didn't have a care in the world. Then he disappeared into the night.
Well, we hope that you enjoyed our latest horrific tale. If you want to keep up to date with future episodes, then subscribe to our email list for our weekly newsletter. You can also give the channel support by visiting our merchandise store or using the affiliate links in the episode description. We would also appreciate it if you took a moment to support our contributor artists who very kindly lend their talents to this show. Check out the links in the description to see how you can do this. Well, that just leaves me to say, until next time my friends, keep it creepy, keep it horrific.